Somebody there?
What's going on, man?
Sorry about your mom.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually didn't think you were gonna be here today.
No, it was, it was Thursday, so.
Okay, because public safety said, well, Jeff's out of town. Because they're waiting on the fireworks thing, and I said, but you had to meet with the guys over at the Jamestown. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
We hoped either, but. No, it was good, my mom, she.
Well, she had Alzheimer's, or was it dementia?
Dementia.
Well, I remember she got.
Dementia, but then she just last 6 weeks.
Yeah, I remember when you were putting her in to, save her situation there because of everything. It's just really rough. It's really rough.
She waited until I got down to Florida to.
To go to a game? She might have a good time. Maybe I lost.
Should I ever do again?
Call this meeting of the Jamestown City Council to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sheldon?
Here.
Brackman? Here. Karuba? Here. Olson? Nelson?
Here.
Eklund? Here. Graham Reinhardt?
Here.
Russell?
Here.
And President Nichols?
Here. At this time, is there anybody here from the public that would like to address the council?
Doug.
Doug, you're up.
I was gonna say, oh, there you
Am I the only one? I'm always the only one. In the next Friday, we're going to have a public hearing on our general fund budget. It's standard procedure. Unfortunately, it's on a Friday at 6 o'clock. What are you gonna do? It's gotta be before the 20th of November. The key dates in the budgetary process, I'm gonna get this in because I want the public who listens to this understand the dynamic and the flow of how budgets work in the city. October 8th, the mayor launches his executive budget. That's presented in kind of like a format, and then it takes itself on this road to city council and becomes a city council budget, which it is now. So on November 20th is a public hearing. And then in a period of time, December 1st, to be specific, city council either votes up or down that budget, of which then the mayor can either launch a veto or approve it. And December 10th, we have a general budget approval for next year. There's a problem this year, as I see, in terms of the dialogue and also the launching of what they call the general fund executive budget versus the American Rescue Plan budget as it relates directly to lost revenue. By no means should the general fund be anticipatory funding from the American Rescue Plan. That's a whole separate platform. If you commingle those funds, it becomes a question as to whether or not how you actually come up with that decision in a supportive mechanism on utilizing those funds in the general fund before the general fund is approved. So, the American Rescue Plan, which I've given a lot of talk about, is a document and a funding mechanism and an opportunity that is a once-in-a-lifetime event due to so-called sordid circumstances because of COVID. And we can't forget the fact that the reason why we're getting these funds is the fact that the problems associated with the loss of life and economic use has affected everyone. So it's got to be a watchdog approach of how those funds are launched and how those funds are going to be used. I'm a big advocate, and the chief knows this, of public safety. And I want public safety to be acknowledged as part of the reasons why the American Rescue Plan is in a position to be able to be funding those types of events. Now, I know there's going to be talk about tonight on certain, what I call ancillary opportunities of using of those funds, such things as a dog park. I'm not an anti-dog guy, I'm a hunter, used to be, all my dogs were in the woods with me. They didn't go to dog parks. And when I looked at those amounts of money that are in the American Rescue Plan, in the lost revenue stream, that influences the discussion about the general fund. So the public hearing should not be about lost revenue from the American Rescue Plan. It should be about the general fund and the revenues that are locally based, that are provided to the taxpayers, all the fees, all the associated costs, some state, some local, that funds this government. The American Rescue Plan is out there, ready to be picked and chose, but not for the general fund. So when we have this public hearing, I guess my question, is it gonna be about commingling the American Rescue Plan and the general fund, or is it gonna be about the general fund and the approval of that, of which City Council has in front of it? American Rescue Plan is over here. It's over here. It's supportive, it's great, but it's not about general fund unless you want it to be about the general fund. Then you're gonna talk about balanced and unbalanced budgets. I used to fight with Mayor Treacy all the time because he used to come with an unbalanced budget. And he said, well, the fund will come next year. Well, that means it's an unbalanced budget going into January 1. So if you're gonna use American Rescue Plan to balance your budget, that's really not the setup under the chart. One other thing that I will say is that I hope that at some point in time, when we get to the American Rescue Plan and all of its review and all of its understanding, that it be carefully watched and documented how these monies are going to be rolled out. I don't want to see the economic development platform become another downtown renewal initiative failure. Can anybody tell me how many jobs were created by that $10 million fund? And the buildings are all closed, they've got funds. And with CARES funding, you have to be sure that the American Rescue Plan is properly orchestrated, properly used, and it serves the purpose of its intent: public safety, public health, and economic recovery. And I would like to see if the city could have an economic development recovery plan so that these funds will just not go to the local development corporation, and then somebody comes in there and requests money at but for, and then is awarded a certain amount of money without job identification, without retention, without new building development, all of that stuff. That's what we're not ready for yet. I know the lost revenues isn't about that, but nevertheless, it's there, it's a separate column, and I think you should ignore it until you've approved the general fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Anybody else?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Sam Piazza. I'm here for the Kendall Club PBA. I'm our union president. I'm here for the men and women that work downstairs, protect the streets, protect the civilians and citizens of Jamestown. First off, I want to pass this along. I came into work today. We have an indoor range downstairs. Our firearm proficiency comes from practice. Take a look at those pictures, please. I understand that we try to do things relatively reality-based training. Again, kneeling down in water and some stuff like you'll see in the pictures. Again, this is our training facility. It's definitely not up to where it should be at par.
Can you explain to us, Lieutenant, what we're looking at here in these photographs?
These are pictures of our indoor range from downstairs. Water's seeping as we speak right now onto the floor downstairs from the ceiling.
So from the deck of City Hall, once again, is what you're saying?
I believe that's what's above it, yes.
Okay.
So, I just want to talk about the police budget, and I want to talk about the American Rescue funds that are out there, kind of piggyback Doug a little bit. We need to really think about how money is going to be spent going forward for the city of Jamestown, for the residents, right? The police department, we have the opportune time right now to purchase police equipment, police cars. Give us the opportunity to do our job better. Again, we have cars downstairs that have 134,000 miles. The frontline cars, on average, are right around 90,000 miles on it. That's just the miles, right? These cars are worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't shut off. So not only do they have miles on it, they sit and idle, the engines are getting bad in them, and we get in and out of these vehicles probably 10 or 12 times per shift per officer. So again, the seats aren't good, the steering wheel, and all this stuff has already been addressed. Again, I'm up here to support the guys and girls that are downstairs and be their voice on this. We need to make sure we have the equipment that we can do our job properly with. Again, the city just purchased $144,000 worth of radios. 60 radios for every member of our agency. That's great, but again, we are unable to, the program that they're getting with these, we are unable to talk to other entities outside our agency. We have to get a trunking system to update for us to talk to the county and the sheriff's department. Jeff, you were a cop on the streets for many years. We rely on the outside agencies when we're at minimum or below what we should have on the road. Again, we can't talk to a guy that's out back. If a guy's running out with a gun, you don't know, okay? So again, we need to make sure the money this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to make good on public safety. Public safety should be the most important item going forward. Again, the city of Jamestown, the residents should be the #1 priority of public safety. So,
Are you stating, Lieutenant, that with these new radios that are coming in, that they will not be able to utilize to talk to outside agencies or other departments?
yes. Until they get a trunking system or another update.
Is there a trunking system working now with what
We
you
don't
guys
have a
have?
trunking system. It would cost us several $1,000s more to get the radios that Lieutenant Piazza is talking about.
So you're telling me, let's say, God forbid, there was an active shooter situation at one of our schools or businesses or something, and Jamestown Police Department arrived on scene. Obviously, all agencies, other agencies outside are coming. You're telling me that all these agencies aren't gonna be able to talk to one another on the same frequency and on the same radios to coordinate things with the situation at hand?
100%. We can only talk through dispatch. And sometimes, you know as well as I do, sometimes things get convoluted where the story changes 3 different times through 3 different conversations, and all of a sudden, yes, we can't talk to each other. We go through dispatch. Sometimes the information relayed is not the same. So again, it's a public safety concern. I appreciate the new radios, but again, it's not up to par to where we need to be. Again, we have the funding, the opportunity from the money that the government set aside for us to do what we need to do to make everybody safe and do it the right way, instead of band-aiding stuff over and over and over. We have the opportunity to take care of it and do it right the first time.
Have you had conversations with the sheriff about the communication issues?
I have not personally. This dates way back. The radio systems from when the state decided they were actually gonna do one great big state system for the radios, and that ended up failing. So each local municipality ended up getting their own radio system. I think we bought radios 5 or 6 years ago, which we went the separate direction than the county did. So, but that's where we're at in that. So no, we can't talk to other agencies during a critical incident.
So this the trunking system is what you're calling it?
That's what
We can talk to other agencies on the car radios. Lieutenant Piazza is talking about the handheld radios that's on this.
portable radios. This is your lifeline. If I need help,
Right.
I can't yell through a wall or through a building to anybody else. This is my lifeline. I need help and I need it now. That's how people come.
Do you have that in your budget or no?
No.
But are you saying it's 1,000 or 2,000 per radio, or is that for all of them to be converted?
I don't know what the specific cost is, but I know it's an upgrade just in some of the software. So,
It's the last time I checked, it was a significant upgrade compared to what's in the budget, the executive budget book we have in front of us.
But again, if you're spending $144,000 on new radios, why not get the radios that are able to get the job done?
Can you provide that number?
I had a question about your firing range. Is that actual cardboard that you put, like, that, what they,
Yes, this is cardboard that we put targets on there, and we shoot. Again, the water's seeping through the top. Yeah, that's just a target.
That's
Yep.
what's, is that like your Band-Aid? You put the target on, I wasn't sure. It
No,
looks,
yeah, that's just, everything's outdated. So these are out, we use, there's new facilities or, pieces of equipment that are out there that we could actually refurbish and make it, up to par. Again, this is,
How long has the water been infiltrating the range for? This is the first time I've seen that.
oh, this bad, this is what I saw tonight coming in. It's been going on, last couple months?
At least that.
So,
I'm happy to address that, Councilman Russell,
Okay.
once Champions is finished.
again, and I don't wanna beat it up. The crime in the city of Jamestown's up, the violent crime is up, gun seizures are up, drug seizures are up. Give us the opportunity and the equipment to do our job more proficiently and better. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sure. Council members, just to address a few things. First off, Lieutenant Gadsden, thank you for coming in and raising those issues. I do want to note the executive budget does include funding for new radios. I do not believe it includes the trunking system. Any requests that came through those departments would be in the back of your budget book, including a new range. That was not funded through the executive budget. However, information on costs for a new range should be in the back of it, I believe, Ryan, right? That was a capital request. As far as the range leaking, we are aware of that. That is a consequence of the renovations done to Tracy Plaza. We have been working in communication with Jeff and his team to try to cap off certain areas, which is causing leaking. But it is a much larger issue that requires a multi-million-dollar repair of Tracy Plaza. So we're trying to do whatever we can at this point to try to stop some of it, but we recognize that there is some leaking going on in there. At this point, the chief has made us aware of that. We've been working through it.
which corner of the building is it?
Right toward the front.
That's what I thought. I was gonna say it's.
The backside toward the grass.
Yeah.
It's that last strip between the building and the grass. The flower boxes are leaking. Existing flower boxes.
Is there anybody else?
Is litigation still going on with, the construction company that originally, did the work?
I believe so.
Yes, depositions are scheduled for February in that
Okay.
case, and we withheld payment from that construction company due to their faulty work.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the finance resolutions. First resolution we have is resolved that the mayor and Jeff Lehman, Director of Public Works and Acting Director of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation are authorized and directed to purchase from Land Pro Equipment via New York State contract, one new John Deere Z-Track mower to replace the Parks Department 2019 Z-Track with 72-inch deck for a total net amount not to exceed $3,000 and no cents. This is in the Parks Department equipment budget and also is part of the ongoing recirculating of equipment so that we get the most valuable or most viable usage out of all of those. Number two is also for the mayor and Jeff Lehman to authorize and direct to purchase from Land Pro, again, as well, another John Deere Z930 Z-Track mower to replace the current Parks Department mower. Again, the net change on this is for not to exceed $2,900. And same thing, it's in the Parks Department budget, and again, it's the location of equipment. Resolution number 3 is for Jeff Lehman and the mayor to purchase from General Welding and Fabricating, 991 Maple Road, Elma, New York, via New York State contract, one new Boss Super Duty snowplow system for a total amount not to exceed $7,449.00. And this is also a budgeted item in the DPW equipment line. Fourth resolution out of finance was that, authorized to execute change order number 1 to the concrete work on Barrett Avenue street reconstruction, 2021 contract with Estabone Construction, adding concrete flat work for a charge of $504 and decreasing flat work, curbing, stone, excavation, etc. for $8,059.50 for a total change of savings of $7,555.50, subject to the approval of the corporation council as to form. That was approved. The informational report, I had asked Dan just to come to this group because there were multiple members who wanted to hear more from him about his budget. So, Dan Stone, you want to talk regarding the Parks 2022 budget discussion?
Hello, everyone. How are you tonight? I'm gonna hand out a couple of things to you. I'm sure one of the biggest questions is the dog park that we had put in the budget at first. What I have first is a map for you of what the proposed dog park site is to look like. And then we'll show you where we came up with the original cost, and then what we've looked at as a revised cost of that. If you've been to the park in Lakewood, it's actually really similar in size to what we're proposing. Ours is just a little bit wider and just a little bit longer because of the available use of the field at Bergman Park. So, I'm sure this is where some of the questions will come from. What we've done from the original plan is we were looking at being able to have a walking path going inside both sides of the park, one for a small dog and one for the larger dogs. We've looked at eliminating that and having a cost savings by using a different product as our base, which is a stone dust product that we can get locally, and seems to be favored by what we've seen them use in Rochester at their 5 dog parks.
Hey, Dan.
So I'll give you a minute to look those over, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. To highlight a few things as you're looking at it, you'll see we've removed most of the equipment that we proposed to go in there, kind of the dog toys, so to speak, with the slides and the stairs and tables, things like that. And we've looked at reducing some of the cost, rather than having 4 water stations available, reducing that down to 1 water station, which is actually gonna replace an existing drinking fountain in the park, right at the main entrance there. We've also reduced, taken out the shade pavilions and the concrete that would be needed to put those structures on. And you can see that's a considerable savings of $65,000 right there, so.
Trees.
So, yep, tree planting, we think we'll just be able to plant that with our tree planting budget, be able to add that in there as well. Our biggest cost, as you see, is the fence, okay? We were originally looking at possibly using the existing fence that goes along Baker Street. I feel that's just too close to the road to have people and dogs on a regular basis. So we'll still use the existing backstop of the field number 1 at Bergman Park and run it down towards Orr Street. And with everything else, the cost of materials and everything is increasing and going up as well. So you can see that is really the biggest part of the cost. And then our material to do the ground cover, the stone dust. We figure in the long run, that'll look at saving us a lot of maintenance time and constantly having to reseed or remulch that area. We were over in Lakewood on Friday, looking at their dog park, and it's been wet, and it's been wet for a while around here. And it's a nice place, it's great, beautiful, there was people there in and out the whole time we were there. But it does have, it's a grass area, so there's tracks where the dogs go and constant mud, I'm sure, and cleanup when people go and leave the park. So we look to hopefully avoid some of that by using the stone dust, and like I say, then we wouldn't also have to mow and maintain that area as much as we do now. So we use wood chips and rubber chips in some of our playgrounds. You can go to any one of our playgrounds probably after 9 o'clock, after the guys have gone by and cleaned it up in the mornings, and you'll see those wood chips and rubber chips make their way outside, even the confined areas that we have there, with the edging material we use. We've also noticed Bergen Park is basically a clay area, so it retains a lot of water. By using this product, we can avoid some of our gravel costs and still provide some drainage. We will have to add pipe and drainage to the area, but that should help combat that problem. Whereas if we use wood chips strictly on top of that area, and they end up mixing in together, and you're still looking at a wet situation as time goes on.
And do you have a larger map that shows where the dog park is gonna be located?
The dog park, actually, if you look at the map, Councilman Sheldon, you'll see that we're coming in off of Baker Street and what we call the main entranceway into the park. So where you would head right to our restrooms and our maintenance building, right into that area there, and there's a ball field as soon as you come in right there, and then the roadway is lined with the oak trees. So we'll use the first field right there. We've kind of not used it for softball for the last couple of years, one because of weather issues, and then what's been going on with COVID for the last year and a half. So we figured that would be a good location. Also, that would allow us to use it even in winter months. You know, when the weather's decent enough that we can still go outside. We do plow the parking lot just in front of that. That's what we call our handicap parking area, right there by our pavilion. So that is one we do plow in the wintertime, because people still access and use the park for walking their dogs, hiking, cross-country skiing, those kind of things. So we want to give them some access to the park. So we figure you can park there and still walk down the sidewalk and go into the park when it's nice enough to be able to enjoy that.
So there's basically, that's the cost.
Yep. Yep. Now, you see there still is a cost for a walkway in there, a paved walkway. So what we'll have to do is when you come in that entrance and where the fence is, that's where we have the existing water fountain right now, drinking fountain and water line. We would have to make a handicap accessible paved walkway to get down to the dog park areas. Rather than having one entrance, and then you separate from there to go to the big or little dog side, we'd look at having their own individual gates. That seems to make more sense. So that way, if you're going to the smaller dog side, there's really limited interaction that you'd have to worry about with a bigger dog.
So I'm not a dog person. So small dog area versus large dog, how do you determine what size of dog they are?
That's a good question, right? Mine's kind of in the middle, yeah. Mine's probably in the middle. She stands this tall, but it's probably 80 pounds, right? I'd put her in with the big dogs. I guess if we'd leave that up to the individual user, we could provide some instruction, you know, or maybe some guidelines with that. But when we were in Lakewood the other day, a lady had showed up with 2 big Siberian Huskies, and then the other dogs were labs, Labrador retrievers. And then there was some smaller dogs on the other side, small lap dog kind of thing. Could tell they were both well used with the tracks that were in there, and the amount of people. I was there for probably 20 minutes, and there was 8 people that had came and gone in that time. One of the biggest, I talked to just about everybody that was there, and one of the biggest questions was, why don't we have it? You know, and that's what we're looking at doing. Cause 3 of the ladies I spoke with were from Jamestown. So, and I asked what they liked and what they didn't like about theirs, or what they'd like to see added to theirs. One of the common things was not having water actually inside the park. So they have water stations inside the park itself, and it's on poured concrete. But again, it adds to that wetter situation that they have.
How do they, maintain the number of dogs? Do people just do it on their own? Like, how many dogs in the space?
I
Or
believe
how-
I believe the sign only really limited to how many dogs an individual could bring. You know, so you were only allowed to like bring 4 dogs at a time. So you couldn't go up with 7 or 8 dogs and go in. But that was only a restriction.
Was there a total, like, no more
There,
than 10
there was,
dogs?
no, there wasn't, on the sign you said they had.
I've gone by there and seen plenty of.
Yeah, and a good day, you'll see a bunch in there, and it's a big area, I mean, even, I know it's on a smaller piece of paper and a smaller map, but that's a good size, right? There's 2 ball fields when you come into that part of the park, so there's the first one there, and then we go to just about where the road splits and goes to where our maintenance garage is and the parking area where the vendors are for Labor Day and things like that, and then it wraps around, so there's a second ball field right there. And that's why we'll be crouching down a little bit more towards Baker Street, because we still wanna have full access of that softball, baseball field there.
What happens if they hit a home run and?
Dog biscuit, right? Free dog biscuit.
This looks comparable in size to what the dog boarding situations have, where they let the dogs run, and they'll usually have, they could have 10 or 12 dogs.
It was recommended to us, 1.5 acres, I believe, Jeff, for what we were looking at for size for the dog park, and that's where we came up with the numbers here. It wasn't that we went down and measured Lake Woods, or just picked something out of thin air. This is what was recommended as you're looking to build the dog park.
Might be a good way for people to do dog obedience too, maybe somebody would take advantage of doing classes for people to instruct them on how to walk dogs on leash and how to, seriously, because you see people that have no clue how to interact with animals, and it might be a good opportunity.
I see it as a lot of possibilities to come down the line. You know, we always have people with our river walk and our bike trails that's growing and our park system alone, where people wanna get in the community, wanna get involved. They wanna buy a bench to be put in there, they wanna buy, you know, a tree for the area. I think we'll get that same reaction here with the dog park. It's a matter of us planting the seed and getting it going. And then it can take on its own from there. And then, like you say, I think, you know, possibilities are endless. You know, we look at maybe having, there's competitions they do, there's all kinds of training classes. The one thing I did notice on the sign at Lakewood was they don't encourage any dog trainers to go up there, at least without having permission first. You know, they don't want it used as a training ground without the village being aware of what's going on.
I'm not suggesting
No.
somebody do it that way, but what I'm thinking is, you know, with the Humane Society, and a
Yep.
lot of times in terms of trying to get dogs adopted,
Yep.
or people that don't know and trying to get experience with an animal, and just, you know, maybe they could pay to rent it, or
Yeah.
it could be a source of revenue to rent it to someone who wants to do training classes and try to instruct people who don't have some opportunities to learn how to handle a dog on a leash.
I think the possibilities are limitless with this and a few of the other projects we're looking at. As I was flipping through not to change the subject, but as I was flipping through the channels between the football games yesterday, they were showing disc golf championships on ESPN. There was a huge crowd of people following them. One guy had a caddy. Right? Another guy, he must have had 50 discs in a backpack he was carrying. You know, I'm thinking that's great. You can get a bunch of people at Bergman Park throwing discs around, you know, so.
Dan, your initial in the budget was the 7.8% increase you're showing for the 269,950. Was that your original cost, or is that you're saying that right now, if you were to requote this again, this is 269,50?
With what we've eliminated out is what has brought us down to the
I know that.
126.
I'm talking about your numbers over here. Because in the budget's 250.
Yep.
In your proposal here, you're up to 269,950.
Yep.
Is that 7.8% just the cost increases, or did you put in originally the,
No, I made a miscalculation on the fence on the front
Okay.
side. Okay, we have found since then, as we started working on this a while back, that the cost of the fencing, we're looking at a big difference in that already, and probably another increase going forward. Even if you look at New York State prevailing rates, they go up after the first of the year as well.
It went up
what
crazy.
your estimate?
Yeah.
They almost 50% higher, well,
We
over
actually,
50%.
I know that,
Yep.
but they weren't your estimates, right?
Not in the original estimate.
the pet waste bags that we purchase now, we buy the case, and it's 180, for 630 bags, 40 bags. We just ordered 2 more cases to go through next year, anticipating the cost, and the girl on the phone told us, anything else you wanna get before March.
And
Right?
Kim, that's why I highlighted the contingency line, because there is no contingency on this. And this is like the wackiest year in 25 years.
I understand that.
Prices are just going nuts.
So why I'm asking these questions.
I know, well, that's why I'm pointing that out.
We've been calling for 2 weeks to get in touch with the fence company to try to get a closer estimate of what's going on. We can't even get phone calls back.
Is that someone local?
We usually use Warren Fence to most of our repairs. We've had a few companies out of Buffalo come that have worked on projects like the Riverwalk, you know, so.
So now you're proposing a 53% decrease in the initial project, and that's what you're confident in? Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
I appreciate you doing that, Dan, 'cause, like I said, when I've been to the Lakewood Park, I get, how come we don't have one in Jamestown? But I think a $250,000 dog park.
It's a big dog
that
park.
was- Yeah. I appreciate the reductions, it seems.
We just wanted to show you everything that was originally proposed. I think before I just mentioned it as kind of amenities. So this way it gives you an idea of what we were looking at in some of the features. And that we can still do a nice dog park, at a considerable less cost.
I concur with Councilman Nelson that this is a little bit more palatable than the original proposal.
My dog will miss the slide.
We're hoping to get the BPU to throw in 2 fire hydrants. Just between this room.
And I mean, I was one that said I wanted to hear more from the parks, and it wasn't necessarily about the dog park. When you first did your presentation, you spoke about doing more things in the park that were more family oriented, to bring families to the park. Also, one thing that I remember you speaking on is the fact of bringing back the summer playground program. How does that fall into your budget? Is that in here on somewhere where that would be
I
factored
believe
in?
it's,
Because as my first job, at 16, I worked at Love School Playground. That was my first job. And I mean, that's an excellent program for the youth to get involved in and have something to do during the summer. It was a great program. And I would love to see more activity in our city parks that are family oriented, that will bring people out, that will allow them to enjoy those parks.
I agree fully. I grew up in Jamestown at an early age and participated in that over at Fairmont Elementary.
Yeah.
You know,
My aunt
I
used to
remember
work
getting called up to the Elm Park band shell, and that was the biggest stage on earth, right, at the time. I think my sister won a hula hoop.
Yeah,
Right?
those type of things.
So yeah, I think it's big, and to be able to get the older young kids, the kids out of high school, going into college, to get them tied back into the community too, I think that plays a big part, in what we're trying to do here in the city of Jamestown. We're looking for a rebuild and inspire from what we have, and to get that homegrown spirit going. So yeah, in our executive budget, I believe we do have the summer playground program. Now, we've decreased the size of that over what it used to be, because of what the school's been doing prior to COVID, COVID summers before that. But I believe we're looking at having Allen Park, Lilly and Dixon over on Faulkner Street, and Jackson Taylor. As our three main parks to run the program out of. And I don't remember if we put Bergman in there or not, to be honest with you. But yes, I think it's huge. And some of the things that I included both in the parks and on the Riverwalk Bike Trail, I put in as amenities. And I think I had a couple pictures in there showing some gaming tables with like chessboards, things like that on there. And then some of the simpler games, as I've been throughout the parks in the summer, why don't we have horseshoe pits down here? Those kind of things. I think Frisbee golf is one that we can expand to every park at a relatively low cost and almost no maintenance added to what we already do. We'd have to do initial work to get it in the ground and going and maybe clear some areas out for it. But I think that's something that anybody can do. Similar with horseshoes. Volleyball courts are another thing I'd like to see. I think that at a low cost, we can get those established and going. And you're looking at the kind of things that just about anybody can afford to do too. You can go get a ball, you can go buy a Frisbee, those kind of things, so.
I also want to note, looking for some items in the budget and questions I have had about festivals and things coming back next year. There is $25,000, if I'm not mistaken. That's correct. In the Parks Department budget included for those events to come back. I want to make that clear. It's not called out that, it's something you gotta look for or ask about, so I want to make that clear. The Easter egg hunt, the Labor Day festival, whatever, that is.
We've created some really nice places in the last 10 years here too that I think are underutilized. Our Riverwalk area, just 2 weeks ago, there was a festival at night there on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that we had a gentleman from Buffalo area come down and put on an event. I think more of that could be done. We have a great lit up walking path through there. We got pedestrian bridges that go across. The McCray Point boat landing, right? We've built a beautiful circular path around there. We had a grand opening for the park. We had a festival there. It's set up really nice to be able to have vendors in the inside and still have all the community members and people visiting to walk around. We have a little area right by the edge of the water where at that festival we had a small band playing there at the time. Skateboard park is coming along fantastic. That is gonna be, there's nothing else like it. We just met with them on Saturday. I had met with people from the Ralph Wilson Foundation and one of the guys from the Tony Hawk Foundation. And they're building stuff that nobody else has. I don't know the exact terms, I'm not really a skateboarder, I'm getting a little old for that, but,
You will be by April.
yeah, we'll be learning, right? We're learning, so, some really, really neat stuff. If you get a chance when the snow melts by Wednesday, you can go down and take a look at it. Some really steep bowls to drop into. The whole upper ridge has metal pipe all along it, so they can grind along that. Really cool wrench, but it's probably 20 feet long, 6 feet tall. That they're gonna be on. I mean, you're looking at the possibilities of drawing people in for competitions, things like that going on at this. Even the guys building it are saying, nobody's got nothing like this. And most of the guys that I've talked to on the site, they're younger guys, they're skateboarders, this is what they do, and they think.
You mentioned the river and all the work, and I admire and appreciate everything you do around the one end. I'd be remiss to not note the neglect and falling apart on the other side of the river that we have in the city. That's concerning to me.
Just on Friday, we were down on East Second Street, right across from Wendy's, Tim Hortons area. Dead ash trees. Doug has spoke about what we're looking at doing there with the watershed group. They're everywhere. Most of you know, I spoke 5, 6 years ago now about the dead ash trees and told you we weren't done when we cut down the 600 we did as city trees. They're everywhere. We're finding them now everywhere. I was just talking to Councilman Nelson, just before the meeting started, about some properties up in the back of Martin Road where there's paper streets that go through. We went after what we had identified in our street tree inventory. That's only between the sidewalk and the road, and as most of you know, that doesn't even cover the whole city because it's an outdated system that we have. We did a great job, went through and cut down almost 600 trees that season, almost double what we normally do, because of the proximity of the trees and the way the guys were able to do it. But they're popping up everywhere. You know, you notice that this year driving down 86, the fall color just wasn't there anymore, and you'll see it again in the spring. Those trees are dead. You know, they didn't lose their leaves. They're dead trees, and that's the effect of the Emerald Ash Borer. And we'll be paying for that for a long time. Part of that problem too is when those are gone, now things like the bamboo, right? The Japanese knotweed move in, the invasive honeysuckle, you know, it just takes right off. I was out with actually my son showing him the skate park the other day, and we're looking and he says, well, why does that one still have berries on it and this one doesn't? That's the problem, right? The invasive honeysuckle still has berries in it, so our birds now that are here are eating that and dropping that seed and spreading it faster. Whereas our native stuff, it's done when the other birds go south, right? It doesn't have to provide a food source any longer. But that's not the case, and that's why we're losing the fight to all the invasive species that we're having to deal with, both aquatic and on land. Knotweed's real bad. Yep, it's a constant struggle. We battled it and threw money at it on the bike trail. Had it controlled for maybe a growing season. Right now, it's popping up in places it never was before.
Right through the trail.
Yep, all the way through. You know, it's making it down to the 8th Street end now, where it wasn't even close to that. It was all down on the Clifton end when we started 8 years ago.
Anybody have any other particular questions for the Parks Department budget and Dan?
Thank you all for your time. If you have any questions, feel free.
Just wanted to note too, Kim brought the river situation in East Jamestown. I think many of us have taken the tour with Juan. He's outlined some of the issues going on with trees and erosion and the currents and the water levels and so forth. I have invited him to come on December 13th, I believe that's the second work session, to address the council in full and give a short presentation of his plan, watershed plan, moving forward to try to deal with that, because it is pretty bad. Those of us who went down there, you know, saw what it really looks like down there behind 2nd Street, along behind Hope's Windows, along down in the east part of town. The water, basically the trees are collapsing and falling into the river, creating tributaries. And, you know, between that and water levels being up on the lake and the dam and everything else, we got a problem.
And we're ultimately responsible for that.
What's that?
We're ultimately responsible for that, for the erosion and everything.
We're gonna have to deal with it one way or the other, either now or later. And, so he's gonna come down and talk to us. I figured we get through the budget next month and give him a month to put together a presentation to come and show and get it out publicly to say what the different phases of the plans that he wants to look at and the possible funding sources. Just FYI, maybe we didn't mention that. I mean, most of us have been
Well, I think
down there with him.
one of his biggest concerns is the buildings.
Yeah, the buildings
The
along Second
buildings
Street.
could actually collapse because of the erosion that's going on.
He mentioned the invasive species and some of the issues along the bank. That's adding to the problem, and it was quite a tour, I'm sure.
Okay, and finally, out of finance, obviously, the budget discussion. I don't know if anybody has anything specifically they want to talk about tonight, but I will tell you, I have very little response from any of you guys about budget suggestions. So I would was going to prepare a document tonight with all those together to get into a discussion, between work and that lack of input, unless it, I mean, I know as a finance committee we've talked, I got something from Brent, I got a couple ideas from Tom a while ago, but no definite numbers, no definite anything. I need to get that from you. I have a lot of work to do to prepare all those together to get this nailed down, and we're running out of time. So, I'm asking that you guys do your due diligence as well as us, so that I can get my job done and get that out in a timely fashion and back to these department heads. And we can discuss this fair and concise, and they are not surprised at the 9th hour. Okay?
Are you gonna plan on putting what you have together before?
I'd like to have everybody's in the next few days. We don't meet next week. I'd like to have it by Wednesday, because if I get enough feedback and people feel we wanna meet Monday, I'm going to need them to call a meeting Monday. It's not ruled out yet, so I need your feedback. I mean, I know we're here Friday night, but that's just the hearing that was already in the paper, so.
Again, procedurally, the hearing will be basically the executive budget, because there was no formal amendments added to that, so it'll be on the mayor's original executive budget, as by charter we have to have, and then council, again, can make changes, have to be now publicly from the floor.
Yes.
And amendment, on the night of the budget vote, which would be November 29th, but it would be nice to at least get out as much publicly anything that we would like to change before that.
If it's definite. If we're still discussing and debating, we're open up until the 9th hour to discuss and debate. I just don't wanna see all of us come with 20 different resolutions, and we have to sit and vote, and then you're gonna go up and down. I'd rather come with a clear, concise group proposal. Someone votes no on the budget, they vote no on the budget, but I think that's, we owe that respect not only to each other and to the administration, but to the public. In light of that, we did discuss, to Doug's comments, we did discuss the budget, and I've been very vocal and very concerned about the intermingling of the ARPA funds and the budget all along. I shouldn't be surprised to any of you. Our job as a council and as a mayor is to provide a balanced budget. If we take out the ARPA out of this budget, it is far from balanced. So, I feel, while I feel voting on the dollar amounts of the ARPA is probably important in the categories, I am very concerned with intermingling the two projects together in this budget. I feel we should do, this is my personal opinion, and I want you to think about it. I think Finance Committee feels the same way. I think we need to adopt a general fund budget, period. And then dig into the ARPA. That's my head, that's my opinion. I just think it's confusing. I've had people who have been on council for years tell me it's confusing in the budget process, so. You can say we're only approving set amounts, but you got projects in there. So that's giving our approval for a project. And that's problematic for me, personally. So, we're hearing about all these things in law enforcement and all the needs of other departments, outdated equipment and such. That goal could change a million times before that. And I think, to use the term, to me it should be separation of church and state. I'm good.
All right, move on to housing. Do you have
We had no resolutions, but we did have an update on the ERAP, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Director of Development, Crystal Surdick, spoke and brought up a project that many of us were not familiar with, the Landlord Rental Assistance Program. The ERAP program required the tenant to initiate the request for funds,
The LRAP allows the landlord to request, assistance with loss of rental income during the pandemic. And in this, was pointed out that the landlord has to prove that they have had an economic loss, which means they either have to have a lease or signed receipts. They have people who operate in cash, who don't keep good records, probably could not avail themselves of the landlord rental assistance program. And all of these will be posted on the city's website to let people know. We'll put the word out to landlords who I've received calls from, who are not aware that there are opportunities for them now, which they could not. Under the ERAP program, there were issues with uploading documents for those who did not have access to a computer. Everything had to be uploaded onto a phone, which could not be done easily. The applications could not be saved. You had to start all over again. It was a very cumbersome process. So it was not all tenant-based that they chose not to do it. In some cases, it was very, it was an insurmountable obstacle, some of the hurdles that had to be gone through to get the funds. But we do believe that a lot of the landlords who have been harmed may be able to avail themselves of this program. But again, it's going to be probably limited to how much funds are available, so the earlier the landlord gets in, more likely they may be to get funding. There is also a low-income household water assistance program to help with arrears on water bills. And this could also be very useful to families who have been struggling. There are income guidelines that will also be posted on the website. And last note was that, because so many landlords have been experiencing problems, there was an article in the November 10th issue of the Buffalo News concerning landlords who were suing to end the state's ban on evictions, calling it unconstitutional. And for this, they felt that they are losing income with no recourse because housing courts have been closed. They've not been able to recover rent from tenants who have chosen not to pay, even those who may have been able to pay. And I think so many of them, as we talked about, if they have mortgages and property taxes to pay and no rental income coming in, the landlords are being forced to find ways to pay those bills when they have no income to pay. So, more to come. Unfortunately, our housing court is still limited to 10 cases a week. And of those 10, I think we only have maybe 1 or 2 more housing dates and none in December for housing court. So we're all bracing ourselves for, I believe it's January 15th, which is, wasn't that the latest date? No, maybe that the evictions would end and that people could start processing complaints. So, and as we pointed out too, some of the homes could end up being walked away from if people can't pay the taxes or go into foreclosure. We could see another flooding of housing issues in the city just based on the issues from ability not to collect rent and pay mortgages and property taxes.
Some of the money that's being made available to landlords, would that help offset utilities that they've been stuck with as well? Is that money, can that be used for unpaid utility bills by tenants?
I'd have to look at that more specifically, and I don't know how far into it you have to get to tell you that, but there is, Marie mentioned the was it low income?
Low income water, LIHAP, or LIHAP, I know, there are all these acronyms.
That opens on December 1st.
Yes, yeah,
and it's
LIHAP.
a similar process to HEAP, Home Energy Assistance Program. That is a tenant-based application, so it would be, or an individual, who needs assistance, so homeowner as well. For the landlord, I'm not positive that it allows to assist on those back utility bills.
I'm just thinking about some of the liens that can be put on landlords.
Oh, for sure.
For utility bills that people weren't, not only weren't paying the rent, but they also weren't paying the utility bills, which is ended up with liens, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of that.
Well, I'm assuming the landlord, though, if the utilities were included in the rent as part of the whole rental, then they probably could use that.
Yeah, I think that
I
you're
don't think
right.
that would make them divide it out if all the utilities were included for water and electric. But the issue will come for, as you said, the liens that if they haven't been paid, but I believe there have been options and people have, I know the DPU has discussed receiving, that people have applied for the programs to help pay with arrearages, so I think they've been pretty successful in recouping a lot of unpaid bills through that program, but it's obviously not gonna cover everybody and everything, and every landlord, so there are going to be probably some serious issues coming up into the next year. And, unless you have anything else, I think that was pretty much it.
Only to just clarify, there are no more court dates in November, but there's one, maybe two in December.
And there are income limits, a handout was presented that for the rents that landlords can claim, it's 150% of the fair market rent by county. In Chautauqua County, just for example, a one-bedroom apartment, the maximum was $920, which would be 150% of fair market rent that a landlord could claim in losses. So if they were charging several thousand, the most they could claim would be $920. And there's a whole chart up to 10 individuals, so that will also be available. Thank you, and they should be posted on the website, but get the word out to anyone you know who may need to avail themselves of the programs. It would be really good to.
We've
have them
distributed
apply.
the ERAP and the LRAP through the, REIA. So they have had that for some time, and they distribute it to their membership.
All right, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Public safety, right?
Yes, we had no resolutions from public safety. We did have two items for informational reports. The first is a special event permit for the Jamestown Holiday Parade held on Saturday, December 4th, West 3rd Street and Fort Avenue Space Plaza. We want to have fireworks with this event as well. However, we have not received liability certificate, and the city is insured at this point. And there's also some concerns with the parking ramp. Some of the work has not quite been done yet. The meetings are planned this week, Jeff, is that correct? With the Young Explosives, you're gonna be meeting with.
We have a meeting tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning?
Yeah, as soon as we get some feedback.
Okay.
That project is woefully behind, I'm afraid. Because of the weather and the temperature, they haven't been able to get the traffic coating on. The concrete work is completed, it's the traffic coating. And the top is the hardest one because of course it receives the elements. And that's right where you wanna have your fireworks, so. We're gonna try to meet with a contractor and get a feel for what we may or may not be able to do up there.
Dan had mentioned at the last meeting that it's possible to put down plywood sheets to protect the.
That's what we're looking at, yeah. But they still gotta get back and forth across the, what's considered the prepared deck, so that's the concern.
So we did approve the parade, we have not approved fireworks at this point, pending receiving the certificate tomorrow. So we believe that will be forthcoming. They do have a lot of interest, a lot of people are signing us to put floats in the parade, which is a fun holiday event coming back this year. The second item we had was a discussion on our food truck pilot ordinance. The city planner, Ellen Shadow, was there. A couple things we discussed was that really there's only been one food truck still downtown all this past summer. Haven't had anybody else apply to do that yet at this point. Starting development to try to have food truck rodeos, but couldn't get any food trucks to come. They were pretty well booked up, so it's hopeful that they might start trying to get some events planned this winter for next summer before they get booked up. I think this is that was part of the pilot, was having food truck rodeos, and there were a couple of locations they discussed. I know with the Riverwalk plan, they're talking about food trucks down there. So this is something that we're hopeful we can do and have more food trucks in the downtown area. But also we wanted to have a meeting with the food truck operator and a couple of the brick and mortar restaurants who had some concerns about the pilot program. So we'll be working to schedule that and make changes to it next year, before it expires. We'll be talking about this one.
They need some work.
That's all we have in public.
Public Works, huh?
Yeah, we had, we had 4 resolutions, and they were discussed on finance, but basically quickly, the one on for the new John Deere Z960M Z-Track mower for $3,000, and that's in the budget. The second resolution was for the another Z-Track mower with a 60-inch deck, the other one was a 72-inch deck. This is for $2,900. Kind of missed the pictures that were on the old PowerPoint that Jeff put together. That was always fun to watch that. And then the third resolution was to authorize and direct to purchase from General Welding and Fabricating 1 new Boss Super Duty snowplow system, a snowplow blade. That's for $7,449, and all of those were approved. And then the change order, again, which was mentioned earlier, for the concrete work on Barrett Avenue. That was to add $504 to concrete work, but a decrease in concrete flat work, concrete curbing, gutter, additional stone, excavation, concrete drilling. Anyways, and a total change of $7,555.50. So that will close out that, and complimented Jeff on the work that was done on Barrett Avenue. I think that's great. And then we had a discussion with Cecil Miller from UPMC and a couple of other employees that work there about a crosswalk on Allen Street. I know this has come up before. They would really like to see this be done. Myself and the mayor spoke to Mr. Miller, I think it was last Thursday, maybe. And we stood right there where they would like the crosswalk. And as we stood there, probably a dozen or so people walked out of the building, across the street, right into the entrance of the parking lot. Just, you know, it's a busy intersection. I don't want to call it an intersection, it's halfway between. And, you know, they really would like to see this get done. So we heard them, you know, we listened to them. They're willing to pay for it. They'd like to see some kind of a blinking light or flashing light or something to, you know, to make that safer. Not one person walked to the corner and crossed. It's a long walk. It's longer than you think. I think people come to work at 7. They pull in at 6:59 and bolt across the Allen Street to get into work. So, you know, and again, Mr. Miller would like to see that get done. I can make a formal request on that. And you know, he mentioned there's like 800 employees at the hospital, as probably most of them cross through there. So we just heard that, and that was it. Public Works.
John, didn't UPMC say they would pay for the blinking lights?
They did. Yeah, and Cecil Miller says he hears this more than anything throughout his entire day. This is the most important thing that the employees come in with. So it's important for the employees.
Mid-block crosswalks are tough.
Sorry.
Mid-block crosswalks are tough.
It's a mid-block crosswalk. This has come before,
Yeah.
maybe not all of this council, but a number of you probably recall. It did get voted down. It's something that I never recommend. I didn't recommend the one on the Allen Street side of the county.
I can't tell you how many people I see blow through that and almost hit people daily.
It tends to be a false sense of security. But again, we said we would take a look at it. nobody is gonna walk down to that crosswalk, and that's the rationale, is
Yeah.
they're supposed to go down to the crosswalk, they don't. There's a break in the fence right in front of the door, so there is a direct shot. We said we'd look at it, we'd look at, it's
They're
their
doing it now,
cost.
So if you put it in there, what's the liability issue? Is there a liability issue to us? I mean, I guess they're doing it, I would say illegally, but they're just doing it, they're walking across the street.
It's not recommended, but it's done, you know, I mean, the state put one on Second Street, we talked about that one by the, not the Boys and Girls Club, is that what that
There's
is?
one by the
Why?
resource center.
Why?
There's one up-
Yeah.
By the resource
Yeah.
center.
Yeah,
Come on,
but then
people,
there's one
throw it
up further,
sidewalk.
but it's on a corner.
Unfortunately, it just lends the pedestrian to think, I got the right of way. You know, and they walk across and not paying attention. And also you have their trucks that are there almost 24/7 backed in, out into the road, which kind of adds a whole other dynamic to the crosswalk. But we said we'd take a look at it. It's nothing that's gonna happen before spring anyways. If he puts a request in, we'll review it. You guys can.
Yeah, it's something, it's like, as an employee, keep coming to them all the time about it, and, obviously you'd like to see something done there. And, so, yeah, just, burn them out.
Maybe they need to turn over the walkway over the street, and make them go up and down.
Well, I'll recommend that to him, we'll see what he says.
Okay, that's it.
But that was it in public works.
Is there anything else before the mayor? It's all yours.
Well, thank you. So just a couple of general items, and I have a few executive session items. I won't keep you guys too long tonight. I know the snow is piling up out there, and you'll probably want to get home. So, a couple of items to note. As you all are aware, this year we have officially started billing for ambulance service. As of October, we had started receiving our first actual funding in that regard. So we're excited. Just to give you a brief history, if you all remember, we had a deal with the county for additional life support services on top of any type of basic life support transport that we do. We had not billed in the past. We have now started submitting bills for insurance. We are not collecting or sending to collections on any bills that go to a resident in the city directly, but we do try to take anything we receive from insurance. So I want to just be clear about that policy so far. We had a big issue with trying to secure our Medicare and Medicaid billing numbers. We did have to get Chuck Schumer's office involved in order to speed up that process. I think many of the members of the federal government were working from home, and things were just going slower and slower. So we were able to finally secure those, officially bill, start billing the process. Our fire department does have tablets that they complete the pre-care report right there on the scene before they do transport or while they're transporting them to the hospital. So funding has started coming in that regard. It's been just under about 10 grand so far, right? $9,700 just for the October and part of November at this point. So pretty good chunk of change, and we're hoping to continue that. And I do want to also note that as of today, we had our newest grant writer, Paula Pichon, join us at the city. She will be a shared grant writer between the city and Jamestown Community College. We're very excited. We had at least a dozen applicants that went through quite a long process, both interviewing with the city and JCC together. We ultimately got down to Paula, who is joining us. She's left the Seneca Nation. She's the grants manager there, and she is joining us. We're very excited. She has a strong track record. She brought in, just her alone last year, about $11 million to the Seneca Nation, and she's got 60 to 70% success rate on her grants. Apparently grant writers track that. I had no idea, but they do, and it's a really great thing. And so we'll be tracking it on our end as well, both for JCC as well as for the city. We utilize some of the software that we already have in place to do that. So we have an accurate picture of how many grants we've applied for as well as how much we have received. So we're excited to present it to you as we go through this process. You all should have probably received her resume today and some more information. You can, if you see any grants along the way, please send them along to her, the department heads. She'll be meeting with each of the departments to go through and update, understand their needs and areas where we could potentially work to write for grants in those departments. So very excited about it. On the same vein, as you may know, the infrastructure bill on the federal government was recently signed, passed and signed by the president. Just a few highlights for the members of council. This does not involve specific items for the city, but just generally nationwide. There was $110 billion set aside for roads, bridges, and other projects, $66 billion for rail, $39 billion for an expansion of public transit, $42 billion for airports and ports. Some of that funding is already earmarked for the Dunkirk and Jamestown airports. $11 billion for safety programs that involve reducing fatalities and crashes. $7.5 billion to build a network of EV charging stations. $55 billion in clean water investments, of which the state will receive and we can apply for to help choose some of our water infrastructure. About $65 billion for clean energy and power, $50 billion for resilience against wildfires, flooding, weatherization, and cyber attacks. $21 billion for environmental remediation, $48 billion for broadband deployment, $14 billion for internet affordability, and $2.7 billion for digital equity and inclusion. What we're hearing so far is that funding is either going to be available as a direct grant, we as the city can apply for, the city or the county, and in some cases it'll flow through the state under a grant and application system through the state. So when I say we're very excited and lucky to have a grant writer right now, it's because we've got a lot of funding that will be coming through both federally and statewide, and having that person to help us through that process with federal and state experience is really great. So we're excited for that. How much of that we'll be able to tap into? Unsure as of right now. We're still waiting for more information from New York State as it starts to trickle in and people start to really understand how that funding is going to flow. But we see a lot of opportunity there for the city to tap into that funding for many different things. Any questions on that? I don't know the answer. I didn't read the whole bill, so I'm sorry if you're expecting any specific details. The last thing I just want to point out is the American Rescue Plan Act. I know you guys are working through the budget right now, and as you mentioned, part of the budget does include that lost revenue category of funding, which is allowed under the law. But we really, really want to push you all to start to look at the Rescue Plan Master Plan, which involves just high-level categories of how we could potentially spend this funding based on the feedback we've gotten from our community. Just to give you an understanding of kind of the urgency of getting this done, it has been 181 days today that we've had over $14 million in the bank, that we have spent $0 of it. That is meant to be recovery funds, that's meant to get to small businesses that might be on the verge of collapse, that might be funding to protect the river, that could be funding for parks projects, funding for neighborhood stabilization, mental health, housing, all things that we had put forward in that plan. I really want to just instill that urgency to the council that there are a lot of projects that we want to try to get out there, and funding we want to get into the community right away, but $14 million still just sits in our bank account doing nothing. So I urge you all as a council, I know it's difficult to do not only the budget and the rescue plan and a lot of things all at once, but this is money that we want to get out and we're getting calls for, and we really want to help improve the community. We only have till 2024 to commit the funding, and all projects have to be completed by 2026, or the funding must be returned to the Treasury Department.
Mayor, with all due respect, I think this council approve the funding amount, but again, I'm going back to muddying the water.
Sure.
So, I don't wanna make it sound, I think we all know how important it is to get this going and how we need to do this, so. I, no disrespect to any of us, I don't think we realize the importance of it, but we also realize the importance of the general fund budget.
So the master plan includes $10 million in lost revenue. The only category included in the budget is approximately $3 million of lost revenue that would be earmarked for 2020 and 2021. The rest of the plan still is to be discussed. So I appreciate it. Yep.
Ryan, I will be in touch, because I wanna talk to you about some things separating those.
Sure.
I don't know if all of you got this email today, I know I saw it come through, I'm sure Ryan can talk about it, but I'm tired of hearing the rhetoric out there that the city is not near its constitutional tax limit. Here's a letter right here from the state of New York that we are at 99.1% of our tax limit. So I want that out there, I want it clear, that we're not just using political garbage words, that it's a reality. Thank you.
Just to piggyback on that too, I've been approached by several people in the community wondering when we were gonna act upon the ARPA funds, and I said that, the budget will be enacted 2 weeks from tonight in some way, shape, or form, and that in that time period and shortly after, then we will be working on the ARPA funds and implementing them and putting them out there. So it's coming, it's just a couple of weeks away, we get into December, and we can spend time going through that and then start to allocate the funds that way. So just want to make sure that people knew that. It's not that we've forgotten them, that we feel that, we're under a closer time constraint to put a general fund budget out for 2022, and that shortly after that, then that along with the budget will start working on the ARPA funds. Getting it out there.
I have three items for executive session. I have 2 items involving the sale or lease of real property, which can impact the value. And I have 1 item for a collective bargaining. Other than that,
Can you make sure the new council members have this? They got elected? Thank you. You have it? Okay.
One of the property sale.
Yep, and 1 other collective bargaining. And one other thing I do want to let, I know Councilmember Eklund, you pointed that out. What we are going to do, congratulations to the new council members that were elected, and for those that are retaining their seat. We are going to try to do, before the end of the year, some different orientation sessions with each of the departments, so that some of the new council members are able to talk to department heads and understand how each of those departments works before they take office on January 1st.
I have a motion to go into executive session. So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye.
No actions to be taken at this point. We could have,
So you both can come up to my house.
with
Are you
us,
still in phase 1 for
Ryan,
leaf collection?
Jen, if you would like, Elliot.
Okay, all right, you don't have to text me back.
Jack.
Give me a call,
Jack,
yeah.
stay just for a couple of minutes.
You guys wanna schedule a time, give me a call anytime.
Yeah. How can I go check on that skateboard? Just stop down sometime. Down there.
Oh,
it's all right. I know.
I didn't hear what happened.
So you can just stay for a couple
No, this is your
Great. What are we talking about?